taking over this lovely lady car. Year as President, Max, and I hope that it brings you lots of exciting things and new interests and experiences, and I'm sure the Colchester Society will be safe in your experienced hands. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Dr. Max Hickman, your new President.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you very much to James for an excellent year last year as our president. He's done some fantastic work for us and really, I think, galvanised the society. And I'd like to present this to this last year. James. Welcome everybody to the 2019 presidential year. I'm very honoured to have been asked to be this year's president. And it's lovely to see so many familiar faces here this evening, which I've got to know over my career. It's wonderful. I think I've been very lucky. It's actually going to start a little bit like a retirement speech, but I'm very lucky to have worked with some great people over the years, and it's lovely to see you here this evening. And actually, my speech was really initially to say thank you to our outgoing president for such an excellent year in 2018, and in particular for his work in involving the society and trying to improve the morale of our colleagues, particularly our younger colleagues. At this point, I'd also like to welcome Laurel Spooner and her husband Dick, as I know this issue has been particularly close to their hearts. And I'd also like to thank again, as James has, Dr. Melanie Carter for her excellent work in supporting the committee, James and myself, and all her hard work in putting on such a splendid evening. I hope you agree we've had a great evening so far. So, when I was asked to be president, apart from being very honoured, of course, one of my first thoughts was, what am I going to talk about at the presidential dinner? I really had no idea. So, in order to try and investigate what previous presidents have done, I tried to investigate what previous presidents have done. I'm not sure how helpful that was, though. One president, who is sitting on my table, decided to describe his family history, doctors. Well, I'm the first doctor in my family, so that wasn't going to work for me. Another spoke entirely in verse. Easy can be. Well, I'm no poet. Another donned a flat cap, somewhere around this room, and talks about her Yorkshire roots. And at our presidential dinner last year, I was sitting at the back, so I couldn't quite hear what was being said, but from the screen it looked like some sort of aquatic adventure, a la Jacques Cousteau. Well, I do a bit of sailing, but that's nothing unusual in medical circles. That's not going to work for me. My conclusion, basically, from this was that I have free license to say exactly what I want to say. So, I've decided I'm going to speak from the heart about what I think is important about and what it means to me to be a doctor. There will inevitably be a bias towards medical politics, given my background in NHS organisations. And I've titled it Anniversaries and the Future of Doctoring. So my next thought was, how long should this speech be? Again, there do not seem to be any firm rules. Now I'm conscious that I'm interrupting what sounds like some very convivial conversations going on in the room. So I'm going to try to take some advice from a doctor who was a previous mayor of Colchester, but was in fact never president of the Medical Society. I don't mean you, Chris Hall. Where's Chris? Dr. John Sanderson was a GP obstetrician in Rowhedge, where I now live. For many years, and I'm sure there are people here who remember him. His daughter, Lucy, is in fact here with me tonight. According to Lucy, his advice was, a speech should be like a woman's skirt, or in these more politically correct #MeToo days, perhaps like a man's hilt. It should be short enough to be interesting, but long enough to cover the bare essentials. Let's hope for your sake that I follow that advice. Now I know that to many of you, in doctoring terms, I'm a mere baby or whippersnapper, but it's now 30 years since I started as a doctor. The NHS itself is only 70 years old, and we have just celebrated its anniversary, so it is young too. But it is under threat, as is the medical profession, so we should do all we can to make sure that they both thrive in the future. Now, again in the spirit of doing things a little bit differently, at this point, departure from usual protocol, I would like to do something different and introduce you to a commercial break. This year is another anniversary, and it's an organisation that we may not have heard about, but which many in this room are responsible for forming. 30 years ago, the doctors of Colchester decided to do something truly momentous for the residents of North East Essex. Colchester Catalyst Charity started its work, and here is a picture of its first board of directors. On the left, there is someone you may recognise, Dr. Ron Griffin, and the next slide is of the current board. Well, the charity was set up following the sale of the old Oaks Hospital. The original private hospital was founded in 1949, following the advent of the NHS under the leadership of Ronald Reed, an eminent physician. A new hospital was subsequently built and then sold when it moved to its present site near Colchester General. I'm sure if he was here tonight, our resident medical historian, Fat Masali, would remember this. From the proceeds of the sale, it was decided that the money would be used to set up a charity that would provide relief for the sick and suffering of North East Essex. As a result, the charity has managed to fund transformational projects for organisations such as the Hospice, Headway, the hospital and various small charities. It has also given individual grants for things like specialist equipment for people with a variety of medical problems and for respite care and counselling. Now incredibly, that money that was invested 30 years ago has been invested so well, despite the fact that charity has actually reached the £10 million mark in terms of grants, it still retains its original investment, including inflation. So thank you to those of you that were involved in that original decision to use the proceeds in this way. We are holding a gala event here at the Town Hall on the 29th of April, and you will be welcome to attend. And if not, you have a project you would like us to fund, then please contact us via our borough manager, Rodney Appleyard. Okay, from a commercial breakover. Sailing has been a recently acquired interest of mine, and whilst doing my day skipper course in rather cramped conditions on the River Orwell, which incidentally will be the location of our summer event this year, as we'll be hiring an old Thames sailing barge from Ipswich Marina. Anyway, a young companion of mine said to me on that trip, well, I think in the future, with all the advances in technology and medical science, we won't need doctors. Well, that got me thinking, is he right? After all, my own son William, who I'm pleased to have here tonight with my other son James, is training to be an ophthalmic surgeon, and his bread and butter are cataracts. Yet I'm told that in the future cataract surgery will be largely robotic and can be performed by a non-medically qualified operator. Well, this must apply to lots of fields of medicine. And I'm not just talking about robotics. What about Dr. Google or some advanced version of this? Essentially, artificial intelligence. I have always wondered a bit about whether the role of a GP can be really sustained in the future. Will it be eventually reduced to some sort of health app, such as Babylon? Well, to try to answer this question, I thought it might be helpful to reflect on what it means to be a doctor, and whether there are any arguments for saying that it will be a sustainable career in the future. Perhaps bizarrely, I intend to take you back into history, to search for the answer, but also to introduce you to a modern debate on the subject. I want to describe to you what I think is truly unique about the profession of medicine. When I was at university, I was privileged to be offered 2 courses whilst I was doing my medical degree. The first course I did was on the history of medicine. We live in a time of great innovation, but what drives that innovation? I believe it was, and it always will be, doctors and medical researchers interested in how they can improve their field of medicine. We know that in effect all medical advances are built on the work of our predecessors, but with occasional eureka moments. Take for example William Harvey. He worked around the turn of the 17th century, and as I'm sure you will know, he discovered circulation. He was a physician who studied in the most preeminent medical institution at that time, the University of Padua in Italy. It had the only working anatomy theatre and regularly performed human dissection, and a discipline that had not been done since the ancient Greek times. Now, theories about anatomy and circulation were postulated by Aristotle and reached its pinnacle with the Greek physician Galen in the 2nd century AD. Now, William, it is said, loved his colleagues. I agree. We should all love our colleagues. When he died, he left the Royal College of Physicians money for an annual feast, as he believed it would promote the cohesion amongst doctors. Well, that's what this society is about. That's what makes this society important. Anyway, the point is, he wasn't into upsetting anyone, and the accepted doctrine about circulation before his time did not involve the heart. In fact, the famous anatomical drawings of Vesalius in his book, De Humani Corporis Fabrica, I'm sure I do not need to translate this for you from Latin, but in English it is On the Human Fabric of the Body. There is literally no heart. It took a lot of reflection and thought on the subject and a series of experiments, firstly on his discovery that veins contain one-way valves, or ostia, and his incredibly simple demonstration, in fact, blood can only flow in one direction through veins, not as previously thought, up and down through the blood vessels. Now, he was very upset about his discovery, as it went against all respected teaching. He had to accept his findings and publish them in De Motu Cordis, an anatomical account of the motion of the heart and blood. As a result of this, he lost a lot of his medical practice, and he was seen as an unconventional doctor, and patients preferred to attend more traditional physicians. But eventually, his findings were accepted, most notably by the Royal College. So here was a physician who studied anatomy and eventually made a revolutionary discovery that changed the face of medicine. I would argue that his intellect, his inquiring mind, led to this advance. Now, we can't all be like William Harvey, but I'm sure that all of you during your medical careers have reflected on what is accepted practice and welcomed whether it could be questioned. That is the inquiring human mind. Can that be replaced by artificial intelligence? My second argument also takes in some university studies. Again, I was lucky enough to be able to study another subject, this time in the archaeology and anthropology departments, medical anthropology. I was fascinated to learn that no matter what culture or society you study, how basic it is, there is always the role of the healer or shaman. The medicine itself may be entirely, actually often not, ineffective, but there is always a fundamental need in all humans to attend a physician-healer. That interaction is often transactional, in that the patient hands over their illness, metaphorically, to the healer, and the doctor-patient relationship involves a process of trying to solve the problem and eventually handing back that problem, hopefully in a better state, to the patient. So you see, human attitude to illness depends on human interaction. Each society has invented the healer role. There is a basic human need to interact with a healer. So, my GP friends, as described in Cecil Helton's excellent book, see yourselves as a suburban shaman. My third argument is actually for me the most interesting. This is perhaps more of an opinion than an argument, but I think that physicians are in fact the artists of the scientific world. And like artists, we depend on two very vital skills. To illustrate this, I'm going to take you back in time. In fact, the time of Leonardo da Vinci. Well before Harvey was doing his thing on human anatomy and circulation, da Vinci was producing artistic masterpieces. He is commonly acknowledged to be a genius, not just because of his art, but also because of his visionary thinking. By observing birds and flight, his thoughts predated Newton, Galileo, Bernoulli. Da Vinci said, as much force is exerted by the object on the air as by the air against it. And that predated Newton, who said, to every action there is always opposed equal reaction. By observing that the top of the cross-section of birds' wings was more curved than underneath, he stated, the air above birds is thinner than the usual thinness of the other air. Compare that with Bernoulli's principle. He tried, unsuccessfully, to design a human-propelled flying machine. To be fair, this has still not been achieved 500 years later. So he was ahead of his time in terms of inventions such as the helicopter and principles of physics and studies of human form and anatomy. He was so diverse in his talents that only less than 20 paintings of his are known to exist. A lot of his work was actually neglected and had to be reinvented decades or centuries later. Now, if you study what made him great, I think it depended on two qualities, which are also essential qualities of a doctor. Firstly, observation. Da Vinci's art was revolutionary, as it was entirely based on observation. Vitruvian Man, techniques of spumer. From his observations came inspiration. Take, for example, this painting, which is actually attributed to Verrocchio, with whom he studied the painting. Da Vinci contributed to this painting. Now I'm going to take a vote. and test your artistic appreciation skills. I'm going to highlight 3 areas of the painting, and I want you to tell me whether you think Da Vinci painted it. Are you ready? So, we have the angel on the left and the body of Christ. Hold on. We have the angel on the right. Hold on. And we have St. John the Baptist. Who votes for the angel on the left and the body of Christ? Hands up. Who votes for the angel on the right? Okay. Who votes for St. John the Baptist? Thank you. Well, before I give you the answer, I want to say why observation is so important to doctors. Think of what we have to do every day, and think about whether that can be truly replaced by technology. Commonly in general practice, and I talk as a GP, we are presented by various conundrums. My GP colleagues, you all know them. The patient that presents with tiredness, dizziness, funny turns, or worst of all, a fuzzy head. Now you try Googling that and see what you come up with. Thousands of possible diagnoses, with brain cancer somewhere near the top, the first page on Google. So in 10 minutes, we have to use our observational skills and come up with a sort of strategy, some sort of strategy. Or if it's late on a Friday night, refer the patient. No. Out of observation comes inspiration. I'm sure that applies equally to our consultant colleagues, except that the potential for observation is that much richer in general practice. Knowledge of their previous illnesses, their family dynamics, their interaction with you as a human, or their accompanying relative, or my favourite, actually, seeing the patient in their own home and observing their surroundings and even their family photographs. In my experience, they can all help in reaching a diagnosis, or at least a direction of travel. Now back to the painting. Da Vinci, in fact, painted the angel on the left and the body of Christ. Who got that right? Notice how there is a 3-dimensional aspect to his painting, created with a technique of sphuma with no sharp margins. The angel is half-turned and dynamic, as if it's about to do something. And Christ's body, with the feet represented through the transparency of the water. A genius. It is said that Verrocchio was so impressed, he never painted again. Okay, the second quality, showmanship. I think we're all showmen as doctors. Leonardo was a showman. He put on pageants and processions, and even designed theatre sets. In fact, this was his main source of income. It also helps explain why his art output was rather modest. By all accounts, they were pretty spectacular. Now I believe the doctor is also a showman. We have to project ourselves as reassuring, empathetic professionals. Okay, let's get on to a modern debate about the subject. I would recommend a podcast produced by the BMJ entitled How We'll See You Now, obviously inspired by 2001: A Space Odyssey. It involves a debate between an academic interested in health technology, a philosopher, and an expert patient. Apparently, a recent study showed that artificial intelligence can diagnose eye conditions better than eye specialists. Sorry, James. Sorry. And as I said earlier, or maybe I've not said this before, actually in 2017, a robot passed the Chinese medical state exams. Well, the academic asked, what is better, the smiling, pleasant doctor who makes the wrong diagnosis, or the machine who makes the right diagnosis? If we're so interested in human interaction, why could we not just have a machine and a psychologist working together, particularly if we have problems purely related to a machine? Now the philosopher replied, well, can the communication of aspects of illness really be delegated away from humans? Physicians are able to integrate human, social and other aspects of illness in a way that is truly unique. It is difficult to imagine how this can be truly replaced by artificial intelligence. There is something also important about the shared vulnerability that humans have that makes a patient uniquely trust the doctor rather than a machine. And the patient actually said in this debate, I've got nothing against technology, but I have had an illness all my life. I had a kidney transplant before I reached adulthood. We are moving away from the age of paternalism, where the doctor always knows best, towards the expert patient and the use of technology. But it is still very important to be able to interact with a human being, for me personally, rather than a machine. I'm also concerned as a patient about how information about me is used. With artificial intelligence, we are actually talking about industry inventing a technology that will be able to assimilate all the information about you, say including social media, to achieve a better diagnosis and a treatment plan. I'm concerned as a patient about my privacy. The unique part of the doctor-patient relationship includes confidentiality. How can I trust a computer to treat the data they have about me impartially without trying to exploit me? So here we get into another aspect of the discussion. The mediator asked, should we fear artificial intelligence? The patient replied, I will never trust it. And personally, I think we have to be aware of the profit motive around technology companies. We are all familiar with the issues around companies such as Cambridge Analytica and how things such as the Brexit vote can be manipulated. As I was listening to it, it became clear, yes, technology is vitally important. No one can deny this. But even the academic agreed that there needs to be clear boundary conditions in terms of how it should be used. Okay, so in summary, the world is changing and we are living in a time of new invention, new thoughts. Actually, not unlike the period of the Renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries. And we have to be prepared to reinvent ourselves as the artists of the scientific world. But we should always remember the time-constant skills of doctors through time, like the great artists of the Renaissance period, and apply them to our profession as we move forward. Thank you. You've been very patient listening to me, and I realise that this has not been a talk full of jokes. But just to sort of bring things down a little bit to earth, let me finish with a few of the thoughts of our younger generation. And by that I mean our school children. I don't know if any of you watched The Secret Life of 5-year-olds. As my children have now grown up, I do still yearn for the gems that they used to come out with and the direct, often embarrassing questions they used to ask. Here are a few true examples of some answers to a children's science exam you might find amusing. Okay. Question. What happens to your body as you get older? Answer. When you get old, so do your bowels, and you get intercontinental. Next question. What happens to a boy when he reaches puberty? Answer. He says goodbye to his boyhood and looks forward to his adultery. Give the meaning of the term caesarean section. Answer. The caesarean section is a district in Rome. Question. What does the word benign mean? Benign is what it would be after